Hey, how's it going guys? Captain Kuba here. So a few weeks ago I asked you guys in one of my live streams if you wanted me to do a top 10 future God of War weapons video, to which you guys answered with a resounding yes. And luckily for you, this is a topic that I've been dying to talk about. I should say that I already have a similar list titled Top 10 God of War Weapons. In it I rank all the weapons seen in the God of War series, so if that's what you're looking for, just click on this link here. But if you're interested in speculating which mythological weapons Kratos and Atreus will wield, make sure to stay till the end of the video. So without further ado, let's jump ahead to our number 10 pick. I think it's best to start with a topic that I've already talked about before. Since we heard Brock tell Mamere that he had big plans for him, we have been theorizing about what that meant. Last week I gave my opinion on the topic. I theorized that Mamere would not be getting a new body, but instead different magical eye sets crafted by the dwarves, which grant the player different abilities, such as fire, ice, poison, even blinding light, inspired obviously by the head of Helios. As of this moment, Mamere only serves as a really cool storyteller. Why not strap some magical eyes for him to kill enemies with, and making a bit cooler in the process. Outside of Greek and Norse, I'm not very well versed with other mythologies, but while I was binge watching Joe Rogan videos, I came across one of them playing with an Aztec death whistle. Scholars believe this device was used for sacrificial purposes or as psychological warfare by Aztec warriors with the idea of intimidating their enemies before a battle. This is what it sounds like, just in case you were wondering. Pretty freaking scary if you ask me. Of course, if a similar weapon were to come into the God of War series, some changes would have to be made. Like the head would have to be taken from an actual Aztec boss fight. We know the series loves the idea of cutting people's heads for personal use, so why not add another one to that list? Mechanically, this item could be used to paralyze enemies in the battlefield while you deal damage with your main weapons. The reason I gave this spot to an Aztec item is because their appearance in the series seems inevitable, as you can see the realm being depicted in the tapestries adorning the walls of Tyr's temple. Whenever that happens, I'm sure the death whistle will come in handy. In some of my previous videos, I've said that Kratos will most likely die in the Norse realm, leaving us Atreus as the next protagonist. But this next weapon sounds very much like something Kratos would use, the Eye of Balor. Balor is a war chief from Irish mythology. Legend says that he has an eye at the center of his forehead, which causes destruction when opened, similar to Cyclops from X-Men. Now I say this weapon is perfect for Kratos because we know he loved ripping the eyes of Cyclops back in Greece. Unlike those eyes, this one would be more useful in combat, as it is said to kill anyone who looks at it. Sources can't seem to nail down the answer of how it kills its victims, all they know is that it's not pretty. This eye could be used in many different ways, holding it up like the head of Helios, or even making it a rune-like object to be inserted in your weapons. Alright, so far I've been focusing on good old Kratos. It's time to give Atreus some attention. The Gigas Ring is an item found in Greek mythology. It was said to grant to whoever wears it the power of invisibility. This item would not fit the character of Kratos very well, as he's a Spartan and loves to fight his enemies face to face, but I think it would be excellent for Atreus, who so happens to be Loki, god of trickery. As many items in this list, a ring that grants the player the power of invisibility would prove to be way too overpowered. For it to work, Santa Monica would have to bring a time meter like the one seen in God of War 2, with the purpose of putting a limit on the time Atreus is invisible. So let's say the player activates the ring by pressing L1 and R1. This would start the countdown, leaving the player to do whatever he wants to his enemies in the allotted time. Leveling up the ring would give the player more time to be invisible. I know a magical ring is technically not a weapon, but I still think it's something worth mentioning. Okay, so this entry is gonna sound pretty funny. What would you say about Kratos putting on a magical shoe to literally kick Asgardian butt in Ragnarok? Pretty funny, right? It's not like it's as useful as Hermes' boots, which granted the player speed. Well, even though it sounds funny, Vidar's shoe might be more important than you think. The shoe belongs to the god Vidar, who decided to take vengeance on his father's death by killing the wolf Fenrir. So he took his magical shoe and kicked the wolf's mouth open and proceeded to cut it into pieces. For you to get a sense of how powerful the shoe was, I have to remind you that Fenrir is a giant wolf. Translating this item into gameplay will be difficult since it doesn't give the player speed, nor does the game give us a kick button. The only way I see it being useful is if it was a magic attack called "This is Asgard," an obvious reference to the "This is Sparta" phrase. The kick would leave a multitude of enemies incapacitated after such a powerful attack. You could also have rune slots for you to customize its effect on the enemies. Again, I really don't know how to make a single shoe work in gameplay, but it does sound like a cool idea for Santa Monica to explore in future games. Some fans have theorized that Atreus might be getting a new melee weapon, like a sword, to deal with closer enemies, but as of this moment he's most proficient with a bow. Now I have this suspicion that God of War 5's story will take Kratos and Atreus back to Greece. It would be really cool if we get to fight Artemis, goddess of the hunt, who so happens to wield a bow. This bow has never been seen in the God of War series, but if it's anything like her brothers, Atreus should throw away his and replace it for a more superior one. That's only talking about firing speed and damage. This bow could also include a magic attack that draws nearby animals to aid Atreus in battle. This would make sense since Atreus is already developing his connection to animals, and Artemis is, well, protector of the forest and its animals. Perhaps Atreus just needs the proper weapon to focus his powers involving the animal kingdom. Alright, let's get controversial here for a sec. The Spear of Destiny was used by the Roman soldier Longinus to stab the crucified Jesus on his side as a way of making sure he was dead. According to legends, the spear was found many years after the events of the crucifixion, and was given to kings with the power to change their enemies' destinies at will. Obviously this wouldn't translate well to gameplay as it's too abstract, but there's just a level of importance when it comes to wielding the spear that stabbed the god-man that cannot be ignored. If it were up to me, I would change the lore behind the weapon to make it more practical in gameplay. Something like saying, Jesus' blood found at the tip of the spear is so holy that when it makes contact with enemies, it slowly kills them because of how impure they are. We've seen other games like Dark Souls introduce poison damage. Why not give us something like holiness damage? Now I know that making a God of War game that takes place during the events of the Gospel will be near impossible, both for the controversy that it will cause and also not having enough enemies to face. I mean, there's Satan and a few of his demons. That's about it. But still, you can't deny how cool it would be to kill enemies with a magical spear as the Hallelujah theme plays in the background. If you have been following my content for some time, you will know that I'm really expecting Freya to be the villain of the next game, and with him comes his magical sword. To my knowledge, this weapon is only referred as the Sword of Freya. It is said that it has the ability to fight by itself. There's actually an image of Freya using it in one of the murals found in the game, so we know it's probable we will come across it in our next adventure. Now, making such a weapon fit alongside the Leviathan axe and the Blades of Chaos will be tricky, as it has to feel powerful while different at the same time. I feel like Santa Monica should look to the magical blades found in Castlevania Symphony of the Night as a reference. With a single button pressed, the blade should go out into enemy groups for a limited time, causing minimal damage. It would serve as another way of dividing the battlefield. Now, when it comes to leveling it up, it could have two different styles for players to choose. Speed, which would allow the weapon to attack a multitude of enemies, causing them to lose very little health. Or damage, which would allow the sword to focus on a single enemy, reducing his health bar drastically. This of course are only examples I'm proposing. In truth, the weapon could do a lot more, since you'll be able to put your preferred runes in it. Once again, I think it's gonna be difficult making a sword that fights by itself fun in a game that requires a lot of player input, but if anyone can, it's Santa Monica. So if you saw my top 10 God of War weapons video, you probably thought I hate the Blade of Olympus, and that's simply not true. I think its design is cool, the sound effects are on point, and it felt good chopping down enemies with it. When it comes to its abilities, God of War 2 lore says that the blade has the power to obtain someone else's power. This was seen when Kratos deposited his powers into it, and later when he stole the Colossus' energy. This could be an interesting game mechanic if they ever bring the Blade of Olympus back. Imagine for a second the blade obtains the power of whoever Kratos is fighting at the moment. So if he fights a Draugr, he would obtain fire damage, as opposed to fighting a Hellwalker, which would give him ice damage. This ability could also play a bigger role in the story. Imagine Freya uses a spell to render Kratos' Bifrost unusable, and he has to retrieve the Blade of Olympus and stick it in the Light of Alfheim to obtain the power to travel between realms. The Blade of Olympus always had a special place in my heart, but I do feel like it wasn't fully taken advantage in the previous games. So if you're listening, Santa Monica, I can tell you that almost every God of War fan would love to see it return. There is, however, one weapon that everybody wants to see in action, so without further ado, let's get to our number 1 pick. I mean, could it really be any other? I think it's safe to say that most of us have grown up watching Thor from the Marvel Cinematic Universe wreck foes with his overpowered hammer, so no wonder we're all dying to know how it will play in God of War. And for that we have to go to the lore of the game. Mamere has retold the stories of Thor's destruction of the giants in vivid detail, and frankly to me Mjolnir sounds a little too overpowered. So maybe it will be downgraded a little bit to be fair against her victims. The other thing I wonder about is the ability to be called back. Unlike Thor's hammer from the MCU, there hasn't been any confirmation that this Thor can do such a move, and given that the ability to be called back is what most fans love about the hammer, it will be disappointing if it's not in the game. But luckily for us, there is one weapon that can do such a move.
Oh.
I now realize that this top 10 turned into a theory video real fast, but I'm guessing during the fight between Kratos and Thor, both weapons will be damaged, and Brock and Sindri will have to combine them to make an even more powerful weapon. This new hammer will have the ability to control lightning, and also the ability to be called back, giving us the ideal Mjolnir. Bottom line, I don't know how Thor's hammer will be introduced in our inventory, but I sure can't wait to see it in action. Hey, just a little reminder guys, for those of you who are fans of my content and are looking to support my dream of being a full-time God of War YouTuber, remember that I recently created some membership levels for you guys to check out. There's Spartan, Olympian Guard, and Valhalla Soldier. Just give the perks, you'll receive a look. You might like what you see there. But anyways, I had a lot of fun doing this list. Who would have known that research in mythological weapons would be so fun? Let me know what you thought of my picks, and if you think I left an important one out, make sure to leave a suggestion in the comment section, as I might do a part 2 video. But anyways, if you liked the video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and share it with other God of War fans. As always, I've been your host, Kaptain Kuba, and remember, go forth in the name of Olympus.